intro, and we'll go. I come through with my promises. I tell you guys all the time, I'm going to get things done. And I got Gloria Johnson in here, everybody. Actually, this one's an AC promise that he failed at. I'll tell that story later, just because it is funny to me. But we're almost in agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Our website is up and running. It is almostinagreement.com. You can go there and get all the episodes, except for like the first 10. I'm still working on it. Or you can go to your favorite podcast provider, whichever you like best, and go there. And while you're at any of these places, give a like, a share, a friend, a follow, a good review, those kind of things, because we need. That's how the math works as far as getting more information and pushing it up in other people's feeds. So that's how we get more people. So if you have the time, help us out. We are still promoting the Fourth Creek Brewers Festival. It's at 126 South North Shore Drive. That's July 10th at 2 p.m. They are it's going to be, the joke is it's KUB water beer. So if the brewery starts with KUB water, the beer that we're going to do at the festival is going to be water, or beer that's made out of that water. So come check it out if you don't get a chance to get downtown or up the Central Avenue with all the breweries down there. This will be a good chance to check out some of those breweries a little closer to home for those of you that live out here on the west side south. So that's that. We're almost in agreement. Stick around. Gloria Johnson, everybody. All right, so we are that one's all right. There we go. We're live on YouTube. We're recording as well for the regular podcast format. So let's do a little bit of backstory on who you are in the grand scheme of things, and then we'll go into specifically what this started as, and then I'll tell the story about how AC sucks, but that's a whole separate thing.
District, House District 13.
Okay, and that is...
and I define it by high schools as a teacher.
Okay,
and
that works.
It's like south of Central. Some of the kids that go to Central live in the district.
Okay.
From Central to West High to South Doyle High. And
okay.
So it kind of ends at, as far west as it goes, is North Shore or Weisgarber.
Okay. I didn't know it came that far out this way.
And Cedar Lane is typically as far north as it comes on the left side, on the west side of Broadway.
I gotcha.
And then all the way down south to the border at Southwell High School.
I gotcha, because we lived over. We could hear Central when they had home football games from our house we used to live in.
Oh, okay.
And so like I lived within earshot of Fulton to with earshot of Central. And now I'm not close to any high schools, but if Rocky Hill Elementary School had a band, I could hear that band. And we were band dorks.
From Bearden, actually, I guess.
But we're West District.
Oh, gotcha.
Which is fun and weird, and it sucks because our kids' best friends are just on the other side of the street here, and they're Bearden.
Yeah, it used to be really strange because I went to Cedar Bluff.
Yeah.
And it was weird at Cedar Bluff. Some kids went to Karn, some kids went to Farragut, some went to Bearden. It was,
and we get to see that show a little bit this year, and I don't know, the school districts are automatically the commission districts, right?
They've been a little bit different.
I'm sorry, but the school board districts are the same, not the school that sit inside them.
I think they might have just recently made them the same. They used to be slightly off.
Right.
But I think that perhaps they kind of merged them, or they were talking about it. I can't remember if it was done or not, quite frankly.
Okay. So where are you in cycle of what year is District 13 on the election cycle?
Okay, we're even years. So
it's a 2-year term?
Every 2 years.
Okay.
So it seems like
constantly
you're spending a lot of time mounting, it seems like you're always in an election cycle, but typically we don't gear up till after the first of the year.
I found that interesting this year that there's been a lot of 22 stuff already happening.
Yeah.
A lot of people announcing, a lot of people starting to get the
I
their
think
toes
it
in the
gets
water.
kind of confusing. I like to let the city elections get over before you start talking.
Right, especially with the city elections going on right now, because it's like, where do I get to vote for JJ? It's like, well, next year, wait for it, because we're not even at primaries yet, and we've already got some of that stuff starting to happen.
Possibly better ways. That's probably a pod for another day.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, and so you're halfway. You finished your first session of your 2 for this term. Okay, because again, I've had Eddie Manis on here is District 18 because he's mine, and it's easy. I'm always a little easier in tracking down my people because I feel a little bit more comfortable being like, hey, you represent me. Come do my show. Where you're a little bit askew, and as far as locally, it hasn't been as big a deal. County and city people, I don't mind because I'm a county resident. I don't live in the city, but I've had a ton of city people on. But then I've had Manis and Massey on a couple times, and so one of the things for the show for us and for me particularly is I've been a long-term, very negligent voter, for lack of a better word. I just didn't pay attention, like most of us do. And so in the last couple of years, I've started to kind of turn on a little bit more to it, because like when I was in college, I was really into federal politics, and then I was like, this is dumb, and I just get mad all the time. Yeah. And then I got into this side of it, and so I've been chasing it down. And so one of the things I'm trying to figure out is how some of the stuff works. And so we got to chatting because I put out a thing on the Speak group, because this education, I should have pulled it up before we got going. So there's on July 1st, there's some new stuff coming from the state on what is allowed to be taught and not allowed to be taught in the classroom. So first, for a structural thing, is this is again one of the things I'm trying to figure out. How much curriculum-wise does the school board have, or is it almost? It feels to me like it's almost more out of the state level on what curriculum is allowed to go into the classroom.
Well, we have our state standards and what the curriculum is, and it's just a big lie. No K through 12 school in the country is teaching critical race theory. Doesn't exist in K-12. Critical race theory was developed for a college, a postgraduate law school course, is what it is.
Right.
And so no one is teaching critical race theory in K through 12. And so what this bill has done is just serves a lot to confuse teachers. I was out Saturday night for, one of the first times ever, like dinner with friends, and then out to see a show, and at the show afterwards, a friend came up to me who's a teacher, and she's like, what am I going to teach? How am I going to teach? She said, on my curriculum are James Baldwin. On my curriculum is Letter from a Birmingham Jail. And I said, teach it the way you always teach it.
Right.
Because you're teaching facts, you're teaching the truth, you're having discussion. And when you talk about discussion, make sure your kids bring evidence. If you require people to bring evidence for where they're standing or what they're writing, then you're just teaching factual history.
Right.
And so all we did is put a little bit of fear, and honestly, I think that was their purpose, to put a little fear in teachers so they'd be nervous about even, maybe they'll try to avoid the topic more because they're not sure. But if you look at the amendment that's on the bill, it's horribly written.
Right.
It contradicts itself throughout the language, and it's not that long. It might be 2 pages.
Right. I've read it, and it's but like most of them, it's all confusing.
But it's horribly contradictory within its own limits.
Right, because again, what I've come to the conclusion of, not on this one in particular, but in just kind of watching the show as it's happened, at least the ones that the items that have gone on in the State House or the State Senate that have had the most coverage and the most conversation around them seem to be the ones that realistically have nothing to do with anything.
Right.
That don't function on the other side, but we as constituents are suckers for the argument, and so we get it. It gets us excited, and it's a working tool that both parties, frankly, do on the regular. Is they figure out a way to get something that gets us excited, to get us out to vote, because we're always in some sort of election cycle on some level. And that's what's the bummer to me about it. As I'm getting deeper into it, it's like I don't even know what we're talking about, and then things that we do get coverage on seem to not do anything either, and so it's really frustrating. And it's
a complete lack of honesty, because you can trace it back to the whole critical race theory, and I cannot think of the guy's name right now, except I know that his initials are CR, and it started in Seattle, and he started attaching everything race related to critical race theory and started getting it out there and all of that. And there's a great article, I think it's in the Atlantic, that talks with him and goes through, and he says he did it specifically for political reasons, to stir it up.
Right.
And we've got that from his own mouth, and still people are using it and talking about it is this big thing that's happening in K-12. And if you see what's happening in Williamson County with these people, it's outrageous.
What are you going to have to give me some more context on this?
Okay, so in Williamson County, there's a group called Moms for Liberty.
Okay.
And they are screaming about the teaching of critical race theory in Williamson County schools, which is not happening.
Right.
Now they're also screaming about talking about seahorses and how the male carries the babies.
I did see
They've
a picture
lost
of that.
their mind over this.
Right.
And it's,
Well, 'cause-
that's it. Science, that kind of stuff is why kids love school. You learn all these cool things about nature
Right.
and
It's
how
weird.
it works.
It's
And
weird. The dude seahorses carry the babies. That's backwards.
it's
That's
really
not what we're
cool
used to.
for kids.
Right.
And if you've ever watched like a video of the seahorse having the babies, it looks like he shoots them out of his belly button. It's fascinating. And like, this is why kids are paying attention, and they just think that it's like some sort of gender switching, and it's just nuts.
Well, because one of the things to me, and to not go into the topic too deeply, but like one of the things to me is as I'm watching things happen, as I'm trying to understand things better, is that there's no way for somebody, specifically an elected somebody in a meeting like the one you're talking about in this Williamson County or whatever, there's no way that somebody can get up and be like, you're an idiot, stop. Like, that's not allowed to happen. Because the context is wrong, whatever it is. Like, it'd be an example would be like, I go down and I get in the city, I go sit in the city council meetings and start yelling about stuff that's going on in the schools. It's like, well, other than the KPD memorandum of agreement thing, city council has nothing to do with schools. But for some reason, it's not okay for anybody sitting up there on the council to be like, hey, you're in the wrong place. Like, this is not where this thing happens. So go over there and actually complain to somebody that can do something about your complaint and stuff like that. And it seems to me that is a pattern, for lack of a better word, of the way that we, the constituency, interact with our governments. It's for whatever reason the government doesn't want to say, hey, over here. This is where the things are actually going on.
And like you say, you weren't super involved. Like you, I was not super involved until it started, it hit me in a meaningful way. I got involved with the presidential election in 2008 because I wanted to see something different than what we had. And so I started getting training and things from the Obama campaign, and that's how I came in. But of course, after that election, I had learned so much about policy and how it affects people. I'm like, I've got to keep working on this. But to me, it was like giving it that local, how important local politics is and how it all starts with local politics.
Right.
And so that's why I wanted to switch there, because I recognized that, to me, part of being an elected official is educating the public, educating them about the policy, and we need to do it in an honest, fact-based, and research-based way. I think there are a lot of officials out there who think it's just good to let people keep believing the wrong things that they believe. I think that Tennesseans are smart enough to know the difference. I think you explain to them how a policy works and let them decide if that works for their family. Perfect example, Medicaid expansion. When it first was being talked about, only 40% of Tennesseans supported it. But as we went around the state educating people about what it did and how it would affect them, it's overwhelmingly supported on both sides of the aisle. More than 60%, usually about 70% support it. Hey, Pop. She's pretty, or he's pretty, whatever. He's really pretty. Kids chasing puppies. No problem. That's funny.
It's my professional dog. He usually makes an appearance. He was required to make an appearance at some point. He always does, no matter how hard I try the other way. Anyway, I
was talking about how I just, wanted to make sure that I was working locally, so that, because educating people on policy and how the policy affects them, and let them make the decision about whether they support it or not. And a lot of times we don't do that. We keep it a mystery. We don't focus on it. And that's why, I get frustrated. Sometimes I'll hear legislators say, well, I just don't have time to read these long emails, and don't send me these chain emails that you just sign off on because I'm really busy. I've been a teacher, and I'm busier as a teacher than I am as a member of the legislature.
Oh yeah, like 2020 being an exception, you work for 4 days a week for 4 months.
Well, I work every day because I do a lot of constituent work and constituent service and education. So because I'm retired from teaching, it is a full-time job for me. And some people can and can't do that, whatever. But the reality is, when we're in session, it's fast moving and it's quick and all of that. still not as busy as a classroom, you
Right.
know? So to tell other people that you're busy, do it this way, families are busy too. You know, parents are working 2 and 3 jobs sometimes, and they, you know, maybe that's all the time they have to tell you about an issue that they care about. So the reality is people are busy, and you have to work a little harder to get them, if you want them really to understand what's happening in our state, what's happening in our county, what's happening with policy, you've got to take the time to talk to them, to get that message out. And we should be doing that. And people shouldn't be sort of left in the dark or fed lies.
Right. And that's what's unfortunate, because there's a whole series of people that don't care, period.
Yes.
They're just aren't going to care no matter how well you educate them on a policy or conversation. They're just oblivious to it.
Them, though.
Right. But then there's the to me, what I find most frustrating about it is, to me, you know, I bet you we could go out and, you know, we're right up here by the mall. We could go walk around the mall and just kind of survey around and do a little, you know, unofficial, unscientific survey, but that don't know who you are.
Yeah.
I mean, don't know me, that's fine. Nobody should know me anyway. But, you know, don't know who you are, don't know who Eddie Manis is. Or maybe it's like, oh, I remember hearing about something on the news about him, or what, you know.
Yeah.
And it's like, these are your people. But they could tell you who like senators from other states are, because they're the national news headliners all the time. Everybody knows who everybody knows Ted Cruz and Nancy Pelosi, you know, but we don't know, you know, we don't know the people that are actually here and doing stuff for us. And so that's one of the things for me is trying to flip that focus over. And I think the media in general fails at it too. It's easier to run national news stories. Yeah. It's easier to sell papers off of national news stories, because for whatever reason, it's more interesting to the reader. And I don't know how to get that part, that effort out of the constituency. I joke around about, I blame everything on the voters. Yeah. And it's true. It's our fault. We gotta do something about it.
Yeah. Well, I tend to blame it more on, I feel like it's my job to get that out there.
Right.
You know, elected officials, if they think that the people that they're talking to are only the people voting, the majority of the people I talk to when we're knocking on doors and all that stuff, they don't know who I am.
Right.
You know, and if you're just talking to the people who know who you are, you're probably not going to do too well, because you've got to get out there and get to those people who don't know you. Right. And that's the majority of them, quite frankly.
Right. But that's the part I want to fix. I would love to see, I mean, like, we're coming up to city here. You know, some of these primaries might get as low as like 1,200 and something like that. I mean, we got 180,000 in 6 districts, so whatever the math is on that, 30,000 a district, is that right? And 1,000 or 2,000 showing up for primaries. Yeah. You know, and maybe the general will get 15,000, 20,000 of 180. And it's just that it's, you know, and especially, you know, we've had a bunch of stuff recently that's kind of been flashpointed and might stir up some interest. But I don't know, if I was taking bets, I'd still say it's going to be crappy turnout.
Yeah, you're probably right.
You know, and it's like I would vote if I could, but I can't. I'm not a city resident. But it's very disheartening to me to see how many things have specific local contact points that we don't take the time to do something with as the constituent, but we can quote what's going on in whatever House bill in the federal level is.
Yeah, and that's why I talk with people a lot. I try to get as much information as I can out through social media, my Facebook page and things like that. And I'm constantly having people come up to me, say, thank you for talking about this. I didn't know about this program, or I didn't know about this. And so, but I want to figure out how to do even more than that, because the majority of the people don't know. Right. And people are, especially through this whole crisis of unemployment over the last year, when we did not have a system set up so that people could utilize it in a satisfactory manner, and then nobody could get through because the state did not hire enough people to answer those phone calls, and people were desperate because they were calling 50, sometimes 100 times a day and getting no answer. And just finding out how important it is for government to work, because I'm never going to argue the size of government. I want effective government. Right. And we knew that was coming, and we should have beefed up that computer system. We should have hired folks to be there, because when people would call me, when they finally figured out, oh, I didn't know, they didn't know they could call the rep to get some help. Right. But quite frankly, they shouldn't have had to. Right. But thank God we were able to, in some form or fashion. It wasn't the best system, but we were able to get help to most folks. But people don't know that.
Right. That's become my rule of thumb. Like, if I got something weird And it's like, well, how's this work in the state? I'll email Massey Manis and Kyle Ward pretty much in one email. Those are all my this side reps, and it's like, who do I go to about this? What's the question? And then one of them will throw me the right bone, and I'll start moving the right way. Because I think Larson J here in County Commission probably put it best. He's like, at least for commission's sake, he's like, I feel like I'm a switchboard operator. That's the biggest part of the job. People come to me with questions that aren't my job and I don't know the answer to, but I can usually figure out the right person to push them towards. And I think that's an important aspect to have in a rep, but it's not the job, as you said. So I was going to make a joke about the desk incident, but I really don't care. I think that's terrible. I think it's stupid. It's petty, to say the least. I'm trying to think of what else, because again, so the critical race theory thing, we'll switch back around because this is where we connected on this. So it's not being taught. So to my main two question is, what is it? We've talked about that, and what changes? Nothing. And so then we went into all why we think that's ridiculous and all the stuff that goes on around that. And so, again, like trying to understand like how, again, like on the educate the masses part of it, how do we get that clear out into the public? That's like, one, this is the law is written poorly. Not that anybody reading it would know that because they don't know how to read that. I mean, it's a different language. And but how do we get that out? Be like, okay, so because this is one of those overarching methods of the way government works, and it's what's frustrating to me is that we see all these things and we get all excited about them, and it's like, well, slow down, let's see what's actually going on. How do we fix that part of it? Like, how do we get media other than me more capable of actually doing the job for me? Because that's what I always see media. That's what I always saw media as. It's supposed to be media is the one that goes, because I had an interview with WAT a couple weeks ago about the ESSER program, and I'm listing off names of people in county who that this person should talk to for her interview. She has no idea who they are, and it's like, well, how are you supposed to simplify this for the other parents out there if you aren't talking to the right people? And this is your job. This is a hobby for me, this part of it. But it's like, it's like we're talking Knox County schools and money. You need to talk to Ron McPherson. That's just the order of things. And she didn't know who it was. And I don't blame her for that. I don't know why she would know that. I would hope that the office would know that at some level because they're a news agency, but it doesn't seem like that's the point of the news anymore, I guess is what I'm getting to, is that they have a story they want to tell, and then they just kind of plug in the quotes and interview parts that they want. So it doesn't seem like their incentive is to clarify what we're talking about right now either.
And it's really tricky if you see, because what's happening is they're cutting staff. The newspaper staff has been cut in the last few years remarkably,
right?
So that it's hard to cover, and they're also changing staff. It seems like to me quite a high level. And then of course when you get into TV, a lot of those folks, as soon as they learn the ropes in education, they get transferred to another station and you get a newbie in.
Right.
And so I don't fault them so much because they're sent on so many stories. They don't have time to get that baseline. Half the time they're new.
But I think that's a market issue to me. If you want to do, you're losing market share because people don't like your news because you're not covering anything in depth. And so your solution to that is to go cheaper, which is going to make you less in depth with less coverage. So you're just going to get worse if that's the format.
And it's about clicks too,
right?
And that's awful.
I know. Really is. Don't get me wrong. I'm putting CRT in the title of this to see if we get people excited. So
it doesn't serve the public to only talk about the things that get a lot of clicks. I mean, it's unfortunate that that's where we are. But if people aren't buying the paper, they're I get a lot of my news online, but I know the sources that I go to are reliable, and I make sure that I go to sources that show their research. Or if they cite a poll, they're going to give me a link to that poll,
right,
so that I can look at it, how it was done, all of those things.
Well, we're an entertainment show only, just so.
And that's fun too.
we try to be informational with it, but I don't try that hard to cite my sources and stuff like that. But I do. I mean, that's like. Again, to me, it's like there's a lot of stuff that's going on that nobody seems to have the time or energy to talk about. And my biggest problem is I don't know enough people yet. And so, like,
yeah.
when something happens, but it's working there. I mean, I emailed Biggs the other day about this KUB broadband question. Actually, I could ask you about that a little bit, because that was a governorly action item of the expanded broadband. It's in the budget to.
Well, the state has approved. You know, the state is fine
Right.
with what KUB is doing, and you know, I say move on it.
So where I'm confused is, was there any other conversation, or was it from the get go? It was only KUB was the option. Was there, because that's what the Biggs letter is that Comcast is now saying, hey, we want to expand our broadband. Can we do that way? And again, this is me trying to catch up, and I'm essentially getting my news from a politician, which makes it even weirder.
Little background here. You know, AT&T and Comcast and those organizations, they give a lot of donations to a lot of legislators, and a lot of legislators have kept broadband statewide on hold, waiting for AT&T or, you know, Comcast, one of the bigs, to be ready. And so, you know, I think that in a lot of ways they're kind of responsible for holding it back. And so these guys are deciding to go ahead, as they should, because the reality is, if you're talking about AT&T or Comcast, somebody else doing it, KUB is going to make sure it gets to every single person, no matter where you are. The other folks, that's not a guarantee.
Right.
And I think it's critical in what we found out in this pandemic that every single person needs to have that access. And if we can do it this way, then why not?
Right. And again, like it's one of those, we've talked about it a lot as far as, you know, is internet actually a utility now? Is it a required need? And the only thing that catches me, and I'm a more market guy anyway, but the only thing that catches me about it is that the reason we're okay with utilities and the way they function is because it would be painfully inefficient to have 3 power companies running 3 sets of power lines and tearing up the roads with projects all the time. And so we allow said monopoly to offset that complication that it would be, where we already have private organizations that are doing these things. And I don't know, it's just, to me, it's like, I understand the value of internet and how it is a needed thing to survive in the world as we live now, but at the same time, I'm not a big fan of utility companies and the way some of their stuff functions over time, because just like any big body, as they keep rolling forward, they just kind of roll into it, and, you know, hey, the point of this is for me here, and then you just kind of roll on without me. Exactly.
And so that's why, like, what you're doing, and by trying to educate people, trying to make people understand, you know, when these things happen, and say you do let the utility company or, you know, somebody do it, make sure we all hold their feet to the fire. Make sure that they do what they said they're going to do.
Right.
And then you can do that, you know, by electing the right people, making sure that you show up at some of these board meetings and things so that you can have a say in what's happening and know how to use your voice effectively in the public square when the folks aren't doing what they said they were going to do, whether it's a politician or whether it's somebody like KUB. You know, if you're not informed on how it works and how it affects you, then how are you going to hold somebody accountable? Right. And I think they like it that way.
Right. Well, yeah, I make the joke all the time. I mean, it's the summer of 225 years of statehood. It's 225 years of how many things went into effect this year? How many things did we get through session?
Oh, I can't even tell you how many. You know, we start out with 1,500 bills, and then I don't know what the end.
We'll be friendly. We'll just for fun, we'll say 200 bills for 225 years. That's more math than I feel like doing right now, but it's a lot, and it piles up. And yeah, I make the joke all the time. It's like the people that know how to navigate it have no desire to uncomplicate it, because the longer, the deeper and more complicated it is, the less that we get to pay attention and call balls and strikes, for lack of a better word. That would have been a good baseball transition, but I don't care about the baseball project anymore. It's happening. But all right. So I don't know what else you got. I'm kind of dry on what I was working with.
You know, if you want to go back to the critical race theory, I just want teachers to know not to feel afraid. There have been several bills passed that have already been said. The courts have already said we can't prosecute this because of the way it's written, and that's one of those is one of the transgender bills.
There's a Supreme Court one on one of those now, the bathroom one too, right now too. Isn't
that just happened? I haven't even read that yet. Somebody posted about it. It was like, I haven't had time to read it yet. Get back to you. But you know, some of those, and I think this is one of them, because within the language it contradicts itself.
Right.
And so it's incredibly frustrating, and we're at a frustrating time when people are talking about critical race theory and they know nothing about it. People think, elected
Guilty.
officials think it's taught in K through 12, and it's not. I was sitting in Government Operations Committee a little over a month ago, and one of the senators compared it to diversity training. It's absolutely not.
Right.
And so the fact that you are interchanging those things tells me that you really don't know what either of them are, quite frankly, because it was diversity training as it relates to someone in the health field. And so to renew your license in this health field, you had to have training, diversity training. And that's about, you might be treating people from other countries, and just how to deal with that. And so she was just horrified that somebody was going to do diversity training for for medical professionals.
Right.
And it was just like, wow, that's just not how any of this works. Just a complete lack of understanding of what either of those things are, but a lot of talking points that we see in national media that don't apply.
Right. Oh, now my brain hurts.
It's disingenuous.
Right.
It's dishonest.
Right, and as I've heard a number of people mention, there's a game to be played here, and this is one of the tactics of the game.
Yeah.
And
we need to not play games
right.
with our constituents.
Because I get it, because that's my frustration. It's like you're not a direct representative of me, but you are a representative for me in my state and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, you work for me. It's one of those kind of things. But it's like,
and I feel like I do work for you because I pass bills that affect you,
right,
whether you're in my district or not.
Right, and I get it, because it gives that distance thing, that hiding behind the complexity that is what is the most frustrating part to me. And it's like, there's no point. And I don't know. That's what gets that's what gets me really frustrated about it, because the further and more excited I get about something, mm-hmm. and more I understand about something, the more I realize there's nobody else to talk to about it. And there's no level of me trying is going to get enough people interested to be like, hey, we need to fix this thing.
And a lot of this stuff is just a massive cover for the things that they're doing that somehow seem to fall behind the scenes but shouldn't. It's like this massive tax shift. Since for the last 10 years, since Republicans have been in charge, we have shifted the bulk of the tax burden to working families, middle class, lower middle class families. And we continually do this, and people aren't aware of that. A perfect example happened this year when we gave another fuel tax break to FedEx.
Right.
So FedEx got a massive break in their taxes for fuel. Now, since 2017, FedEx has gotten 3 of those tax breaks for fuel. Also, since 2017, you and I have gotten 3 tax increases at the pumps.
Right. And we might have a federal one coming down here pretty soon, too.
But the folks don't know that.
Right.
And then also last year, we didn't give a fuel tax break, but the largest tax break in our budget last year was $21 million to FedEx. And then, on top of all of the tax breaks that they got from the federal government, the state gives them the largest tax break in our budget, which was $21 million. You will also find that a whole lot of legislators get a big old chunk of cash when it comes election time from FedEx.
Right. Yeah, that's one of the ones too that we've talked about a little bit. And I that's just one I don't understand enough to get into it, because I don't. According to Matt Shears, one of my top campaign issues from the super democratic person computer thingy, like it pulls up your record or whatever, is that election finance reform is one of my things. And yeah. I don't know that I don't understand it well enough to feel like it's one of my things. Like, sure, I don't like the idea of it, but at the same time, I'm not sure where I stand on, how is it going to fund otherwise? Like, I don't like the idea that it's so expensive. Like, I mean, like, what was it? Well, when you did Obama's, how many $1 million was Obama's election? A
perfect example. Let's look at local. So, go look at my financials. And anybody, and I encourage people to do this when it comes to election time. Go look at go to the Tennessee Campaign Finance website and look up where your candidate gets their funds and look up how they spend those funds. And so if you go look at my funding, you'll see probably 1,000 donors in one cycle. and they're regular people, the vast majority.
Right.
I don't take corporate PAC money. I don't take lobbyist money. Any group that comes together individually and puts in an amount and has a vote, I do take donations from those groups. But it has to be a group that everybody pays in and everybody has a vote.
Right.
And so, but what you will find from most, I'm going to have to say most because I did a deep dive last summer. You will find only donations from PACs, lobbyists, and other candidates PACs.
Right.
And you will see precious few donations from individuals in the district or individuals, in the county that support them. I do get donations. I get donations from as far as Colorado. I lived there for a while, and some of the teachers know how I am on education, and they donate to me. But the majority of my folks are right here.
Right.
And you will see that some folks running for office get no donations or almost very few from their own district.
That's weird.
And so what does that tell you? Who are they listening to?
Right.
Who's funding? They're listening to the folks who are funding their campaign. And that's why you have people in the legislature who are voting against medical cannabis, who are voting against Medicaid expansion. They're voting.
See, I would vote against medical cannabis because it's a waste of time. Let's just go ahead and go full rec.
Well,
like we
they're
should
also
have a
voting
decade ago.
against decrim or
I think that's one
recreational.
of my. Well, we need to go full rec and just get it over with. It frustrates the crap out of me.
You know who's up there, right?
I do. I mean, Massey's in on it. I wouldn't have picked that out of a hat if I was looking at lineups. I would not pick Massey. Have been a pro medical at least.
Well, let me clear something up about. Are you aware of the bill that was passed this year?
Yeah.
Okay.
The one that's the task force to be prepped for when it goes federally legal, that one?
And they acted like that was a step in the right direction.
Stupid.
It's a horrible step because what people don't know, little known clause in the bill, we cannot do anything on cannabis until the feds change the schedule.
Oh, that was a part of the bill?
That's what the bill says. And so that's why I voted no.
Oh, jeez.
Because that was a trick.
Right.
And I brought that up to attention on the floor and said that's why I was voting no. And the thing about that's so frustrating is, 30 states, the feds have already they're letting that go, and they've clearly 30 other states are doing it. But the most frustrating thing, we passed other legislation in the same year that says we are going to ignore the federal government.
Right.
So, what is it?
Right. We do or don't like them. We just use them.
Yeah.
We use them when we need them, and we ignore them when we don't.
Right.
Because because to me, I pitched this at Madison, Massey, in prayers. To me, is that it's an all economics thing. I don't smoke and never have. It's just not been my thing. It's just economics. And if we wait till it's federally legal, then when I open my retail shop, I'm going to buy everything from Colorado and California. So we'll have no growers locally. We'll have no distributors locally. It'll all be FedExed in, and we'll go from there because they're going to be better at it. They've been at it for years already. By the time we get all set up, that's where all the product's going to come from, where if we do it now before we can ship it, then it has to be done here. It has to be local growers. It has to be local distributors because Tennessee will grow well. Everybody knows that. Yeah. But it'll take 15 years for Tennessee to catch up to what's going on in Colorado, California, product-wise. So as a retailer, I'm not going to touch local product. And like how much tax money are we talking about? How many jobs are we talking about putting on the ground in all the different parts of it? But no, I don't have to because I'm going to just I'm just going to import it.
And even to hit your point even further, right before the pandemic, I went to a legislative conference, and one of the reasons I went was they were typically legislative conference. They might do an hour or 2 hours on an issue. Well, they were doing an all-day deep dive into cannabis, and so I wanted to go specifically for that reason, to hear what they had to say, because they were going to have Colorado and these other states, and then they were having Illinois, who at the time was just starting. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted to go learn and hear what works, what doesn't work, all of that. And it was fascinating to me. And what they said, specifically related to what you just talked about, is that if your state's not doing it within the next year or two, you will not be a growing state. The growing states are already going to be determined, and Tennessee would be a great growing state. But they're going to look to other states who are already in the business, and Tennessee's going to lose.
Right.
so stupid economically. You know, it's the same to me. Medicaid expansion is not expanding is so stupid economically. It's just outrageous. And this is another one of those situations where it's an epic economic fail.
So the question is, this is what's popping in my head right now. The question is, like, as a you're not, but as the conservative house or state government that we have, what are we conserving? Like, what are we actually holding on to?
They're not super conservative, are they?
That's so important. Like, what are we trying to protect from progress? Because I mean, that's the lazy way of kind of describing politics. But like, what are we conserving anymore? Because it's not the Judeo-Christian part of it as much as it used to be. There's parts and pieces in there that still stick around. It's not an economic small government kind of thing like it used to be. What are we trying to conserve other than just to prove a point? Or really, I know the answer to it. The answer to it is we won the game, and so we're going to play the game our way until they beat us at the game, and then we get to play the dirty version on the other side, like we do and we're going to do and all that kind of stuff. And that's what drives me nuts about it, because it's not in my interest. It's not the game's not in my interest as a constituent.
Boy, you're not kidding. And that's the thing that I get so frustrated with. While you're spending taxpayer dollars and pulling petty stuff to bully a member, you're not focusing on the constituents. And I believe right now, I'm not sure what the folks across the aisle stand for. It's clearly not, lower taxes, because they're not talking about that anymore. They're talking about these wedge issues that aren't even based in fact. And it's outrageous. I just saw a legislator the other day commenting on the national news about the Olympic Committee deciding to allow a transgender athlete to compete in weightlifting or something, I think. And I'm just like, why not let the Olympic Committee? That's their deal.
Right.
That's their specialty. I don't believe we should be legislating that. I think that should be decided by those organizations.
Right. But to be fair, I could see where it goes in the sense of, like, this is a conversation about what we do legislate, mainly being the school systems. And that, like, I don't think we should legislate what the Olympic Committee is doing. I agree with it there, but this is the analogous. I understand that I could draw the thread.
I disagree that we should be legislating what the school systems do.
See, I'm on board with you that too, and that's another one. And what I should do is start a whole new podcast. It's a whole separate series of stuff. Is the how this thing is supposed to work show, and then we can just go through the history of trying to figure out how it was set up originally and why things are the way they are and that kind of stuff. I don't have 50 years to put that together, but that would because I think that's one of the questions. Like I ask the question a lot. It's like, what is government supposed to be doing? Yeah. And then what are they doing?
And they can no longer say they're low taxes. They can't say they're small government anymore. I mean, everything they do is getting in someone else's business.
I don't have to carry my permit anymore. I mean, I got my carry permit right before I didn't have to get my carry permit, but that's a little bit of smaller government.
You know what? I have a problem with that too. So that's when we're probably not going to be real close in agreement, because I think the permitting system worked just fine. I think it's funny that another bit of hypocrisy, they are screaming you must have a permit for the First Amendment, but apparently Second Amendment you don't have to have a permit for.
Right.
I guess they need a flow chart to explain their version of the Constitution.
Well, again, and to because for me, like I often argue more of a libertarian than anything else. I'm adamantly non-party affiliated, I guess is the better way to put it. Is that I can't see how the system of politics, not governance, but actual politics itself is. It doesn't. How do we expect the politics, the way it works, to result in anything but the governance that we have? I guess is where I'm so adamantly non-partisan about stuff, is that this game of politics, which is the how do I get the job, is so nasty and so dirty and so I could say the word hypocritical. There we go. Yay, Knox County education. Boop, boop, boop.
No, sometimes it just gets tied up in there.
And so the players that play these games now run the government. And so what do we expect to happen? And that's like a joke all the time. Is like, this show is supposed to be a government show that does way more politics, because one necessitates the other at this point.
Well, it should be governance, period. To me, education should not be partisan. Healthcare should not be partisan. So much of this, it's great for city council, which is nonpartisan, to say there's not a partisan way to fill a pothole. But the reality is making sure that every single one of our kids gets the best education possible should not be partisan.
Okay. So I got in trouble. I almost got uninvited from the speak group because I'm open to the premise. I'm not saying I'm for, but I'm open to talking about vouchers. Because I've had Ron McPherson in here 3 times talking school budgets, trying to wrap my brain around what a school budget is. And spent like a whole episode trying to figure out the BEP formula and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And sadly, according to Ron McPherson, I'm one of the most knowledgeable people on how BEP works in Knox County. So me, you, and 3 other people actually understand this thing, and I don't understand it at all.
Yeah.
But to me, it's one of many things that I think we societally agree that aren't up to snuff. Like, it's not where we want it to be. Education being one,
when
Medicare
you've got
being
11,000 teachers funded outside the BEP, we've got a problem.
Right. And so it's one of those that I think, again, it's like, it's one of those issues that a lot of us agree that there's a problem here. But, you know, again, I like the speak group. I'm glad I'm a part of it. Please don't kick me out. But saying that this way is the only way, even though this way has been the way that's been the problem way, you know, not saying that this way is what made the problem, but that there is a problem and we all agree on that part of it. But there's only one solution, and that's more state funding. And it's like, well, give me something to work with here. I want to talk about more than just the one solution. And so I, by default on that premise, am open to a conversation about vouchers.
We're 46th in funding in the nation.
Right.
And I've got folks sitting up there in the legislature saying, we're going to be number 1 in outcomes. You will never be number 1 in outcomes when you are 46th in funding. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen.
Was it like Utah's? Utah's down there in the 40s, and they're top 5 or something like that.
And it's a little bit different.
So
I agree.
On.
Hold
I
on.
just know I know a random stat that makes me feel smart. That's really all that was.
And before you can run with me. Right now, currently, teachers are making less than they made 10 years ago. In Tennessee, they are making less than they made 10 years ago when you take cost of living into effect.
Right.
And last year, they were making 2% less than 10 years ago. This year, they're making 3% less. So we're going in the wrong direction. Kentucky and Georgia fund $2,000 more per student than Tennessee does. Alabama, we are chasing Alabama, they fund $400 more per student than we do. In the 8 states in our region, the Southeast region, I'm not comparing apples to oranges, you know, New York or California or Utah or anybody else, but just the states that make up our region, we are funding $1.7 billion behind those states averaged together.
Right.
And so when we are not properly funding education, and then you take more of those education dollars to go to charter schools or to go to vouchers, you've got a huge miss. And it's hard to see, because if you look at Nashville, where they've got a lot of charter schools, and then you go to Memphis, and they've got a lot of charter schools. Once you have this proliferation of charter schools, it's kind of hard to see in the budget how that affects it. Mm-hmm. But we had the perfect example a couple of years ago when in our budget, I think we were, and I might switch up the figures, but we were about $3.9 million below budget. And they thought they were going to have to quit some of the magnet program and the project grad. They were going to toss those out because they were $3.9 million short in the budget. And then you can just look on the line item budget for the charter school, 3.6 million.
Right.
That just shows you that charter schools take so much money away from the budget and the other schools, and the solution is not trying to create something else. When you pick up a student from their community and set them down in another community to educate them, you're not addressing one single reason that the kid's not succeeding.
Right.
And so that's why we found charter schools and voucher schools not to make any measurable difference from our public schools.
We need to do a whole other episode on this thing, because I
I
really want to break it down. Because like I joke all the time. I joke with Ron McPherson.
But it's a conversation to have.
Because like to me, and again, I understand that I don't know all the ins and outs and all the different particular things that a school does. But it's like when Ron was here, we were talking about it, and that year, that was the 2019 budget we were talking about. Mm-hmm. Pre-pandemic was about $10,000 a kid for the year. And so I was like, I think it was up to third grade, and then after that the number shifted. I can't remember exactly, but essentially it's like, so 20 first graders, it would be, what was that, $2 million, right?
I don't do math.
Yeah, I'm second at it too. Knox County Schools kicking butt again.
Yes, I'm just kidding because I always say I don't do math in the summer.
No, it was $200,000 a year is the right answer. I'm doing bad math, but it was I was thinking about. I was like, you give me 20 kids, I can go hire 2 teachers, and then again, I understand I'm not filling all the gaps in, but that's one of the things in governance in general. As I can't wrap my head around why things are so expensive. Using the school example as one for 20 kids.
I can tell you.
20 kids, that's why I said I think it's a whole new episode. 20 kids, $200,000 doesn't seem like it seems like that should be enough to cover a year's worth of stuff. Apparently it's not, and I understand that, but I don't understand it. Like I get I've been told that it's not enough, but I don't understand how it's not enough. Because, for to me, I think the trying to figure out how expensive things are is what's one of the most confusing things to me, is trying to figure out these budgets and how they work and like the numbers, because it goes the same thing goes into road work, it goes into all the other different stuff that governmentally does. It's like I can't rationalize some of these numbers, like what they say it's going to cost to fix that bridge in Memphis.
Oh, I don't know.
It was some obnoxiously large number, and it's like, what would it cost to build a new one? More than that? How is it like those kind of numbers? Like how much did Henley Street cost? Well, we redid the Henley Street Bridge. It's like they're such astronomical numbers that my normal person brain just can't rationalize it down. And so I think that's one of the things I'm struggling trying to understand school budgeting, and why it's like, again, I'm not saying that vouchers are the answers or charter schools are the answers, but I think it's hard to have a conversation when I can't figure out the base parts of it, because what the state pays 40% of our school budget here.
I'm not sure of the percentages right now.
Because of the way the BEP
actually, because right now the feds are 10%ish. Right now the county's paying more than the state. But when you look at historically, take it, UT, the state used to fund 70% of UT. Now they're funding 30%.
Right.
The state is doing a lot of things and taking monies away from the locals, and this is where I talked about that tax burden shifting.
Right.
They're not going to raise any taxes. Well, they actually have, but they're going to make it so counties and cities almost have to, because they've taken away the money for the hall tax and all these other millions of dollars that cities and counties typically get.
Right.
And then how do we pay our police? How do we pay our firefighters? All of that stuff,
Right, because again, that's what's confusing about it. Like, it's like, well, if
they continually put the burden on cities and counties because they don't want to be the ones.
Well, because it's like, we do the simple math here. It's our local is 2 1/4 or 2 3/4. I always get that mixed up. The state takes 7, and then we have our federal income tax. It's like, so in my standard tax, like if I break my taxes down for a year, I pay most of my taxes to the federal government as far as my tax burden goes, second to the state, and then third to the local. And it's like, well, which one does more for me? The local. So why am I paying them the least? So if I was, just simple illustration or whatever, if I was paying $100 a year total in all the different taxes that I paid, I'm paying 10 to the local and 80 to the federal. But the federal does the least to me on a day-to-day basis.
An interesting thing for you to consider is like talking to a lot of different mayors and rural mayors surrounding us, and the problems they've had because of the funding that's been cut to them from the state. And you learn a lot that way.
I just like because that's again, it's a military question, it's a big federal issues question, but to me, like, I'd be much more comfortable paying more in taxes if I saw results. Mm-hmm. And I think we could do that if it was locally first. Because I think it makes sense to have the locals do more of the work, because it's here. They me better than Blackburn. I guess that'd be the local one. I was trying to, because I really try not to pay attention to federal politics. I don't know our senators that well, but and so like it makes sense that you should have a better grasp on what's going on here and how to spend money here than the federal government should. That's how I feel like it should work. And that's what, again, going back to that, this is how the whole other podcast about, this is how I think government should work.
Right. And that's where the politics comes into it, where I wouldn't trust the current administration to fund schools correctly. And, I think in that case, you need the federal government setting guidelines. And, what federal helps with, because I taught special ed, a lot of the federal monies that come to school systems are for special ed programs and some of the, the Title I stuff.
Where in Colorado were you?
I was in Colorado in Denver for 3 years.
Okay, my sister lives up in Fort Collins, and she's a teacher up there, and so I didn't know if maybe they crossed.
Okay, yeah.
Maybe you crossed
Fort
paths.
Collins is very cool. It's
Yeah,
a
she
neat
likes it a
place.
lot. It's like 105 degrees there right now, though. It's hotter.
Oh, wow.
Hotter than I'll get out up there on the mountaintop.
But you know what? You stand under a tree and it feels like it's 70.
Yeah, it's nothing. Yeah, it's so weird. It's dry. Like I remember I was up there a couple years back and it was like 97, 98 outside.
Yeah.
And I was just standing around or whatever, and I walked inside, and as soon as I hit the air conditioner, I started sweating. I was like, why wasn't I sweating when it was out in the hot? I'm so confused. I was sweating. It was just
Yeah, I had a friend who came out when I was living out there, and she ran 5 miles. She goes, I don't understand. I didn't sweat. I said, oh, you sweated. It just very quickly
right.
went
It
straight
evaporates
into the
right
air.
off. That was a whole non sequitur. I apologize. But yeah, I mean, just because to me, I think it's very frustrating as a constituent to try to follow the money, because that's the obvious answer to a lot of things, and to see that what was that? Ron McPherson told me another great stat. It's like Knox County schools consist of like 6% of the state population of K through 12 students, and receives like 3.5.
About 1 million students.
So it receives about 3.5% of the state budget. And it's like, again, I understand that some of the rural counties don't have the income and they need a little help, and I'm not saying there shouldn't be some collective good that goes on a state level, but that's a pretty significant chunk. And like, how is it that much more expensive to run a school in Roane County than it is to run a school in Knox County? Like, I don't understand how that part of things works.
It's just that they don't have the money coming in. Roane County doesn't have the money coming in that the Knox County does or Nashville does. I mean, that's why we have so many lawsuits. It's more interesting now, where in the past typically we have had rural counties suing the state for not fully funding education. Now we're in a weird situation where we've got Memphis, Nashville, Chattanooga suing the state because they're not fully funding education. Because one of the two things in the Constitution that we have to do are, one of them's fully funding education.
Right, and then
Says
a
that
balanced budget
very
right.
clearly.
Right.
And so we're not doing it. And when you've got a BEP that only funds a portion of the teachers, like I said, 11,000 positions that are paid outside of the BEP. And so in Knox County, I think it's somewhere between 500 and 600 teachers that Knox County's paying that aren't included in the BEP. So when they say a 2% raise, it's not a 2% raise, because you have to spread that out between those additional 11,000.
Right, which we did make up for what Lee said, a 4% raise this year, 3%. He said it in his speech, right?
Yeah, but again, it's
but
still,
the local budget made it up, and that our teachers are actually getting that, but we are making that up locally. It's not actually coming from the state.
And even with that, we're still behind 10 years ago what
Right.
they were being paid.
That's so weird.
Yeah. It's showing that our lack of commitment. Mississippi made a big investment in education this year. So when it all shakes out, they might even be ahead of us. We might drop behind Mississippi. That's a possibility, and that's not cool.
Right. Well, because I mean, again, because like one of the things to me is like I was of the generation where you went to college. Like I was right there on the beginnings of that. You have to go to college kind of thing, and it was like, because my parents weren't, you didn't have to, you could get away with it or whatever. But and then now we're rolling back into, well, maybe you don't, but you need to go to a technical school or something like that. And my argument is like, why can't, like, are we not graduating fully functional adults when we graduate from high school, and they need more to go into the workplace? Or is, because like I'm not like, when you get into tech school stuff, it's a specific skill set that's going to get you anything, which is the same thing a college should be. I want to go do some high-end finance. I need that specific skill set that the public school system didn't teach me. That tracks. But if I just want to go out and work and just kind of be a normal Joe, I should be able to function out of high school with that.
And again,
if we were doing a good job in
some
school.
of the things that are preventing that is some of the legislation coming out of Nashville. The reason I ever ran for office, because of what they were doing in education. And this idea that we are getting away from the idea that everybody is going to college, but we're still making requirements. We require 4 years of math, and it was hard to find that fourth math for some students who weren't on a college path, that are going to need trigonometry or pre-calculus, that sort of thing. It was funny.
Should have added like house math on how to balance checkbook or something like that.
When I graduated, you only had to have Algebra 1. You only had to have 1 year of math. Now, I had 3. I went through algebra. I did Algebra 1, geometry, Algebra 2. I can't remember if I took pre-cal. I don't think I did take a fourth math. And I'm fine.
Right. I'm trying to think of what I did.
Guess what? I never used my Algebra 2 other than tutoring, but as far as in anything that I did.
I pulled out
Algebra
Pythagorean
1,
the other
definitely.
day.
Geometry, yes.
I actually functionally used Pythagorean theorem like in the real world.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like a couple days ago. So
Absolutely. And so there are things within algebra and geometry I have used.
Right.
I don't think I've ever needed anything that I learned in Algebra 2 or anything above that in, my daily life. Some
Right.
do, some don't.
Right.
And I want to encourage kids to certainly take it if that's, if it's something that they love and it might have to do with their career, and that's fabulous. But I think to require that for all kids,
Right.
Is probably not the smartest thing I've ever heard of.
Right. And I'm on board, like, going back just a second, like the idea of the state mandating things but not paying for it's a problem. I think that's just dumb.
Unfunded mandates are their biggest joy.
Right.
The RTI, that whole situation with response to intervention if kids are falling behind was a massive unfunded mandate. And it started off that they've tried to, in the last few years, gradually fund it. But you blew it when you didn't fund it the year one.
Right. So, okay, so here's the question. As a parent here in Knox County School Board, other than some random lawsuits, is there anything that the school board here could do when they say, no, you can't unfund it, I can't pay for that, whatever? Like, is there any action that we have on the local side to push back against state failures on this?
Let me talk about what the real problem is.
Okay.
And it's quite distressing that we have a retaliatory state government and a retaliatory governor and state legislators. I mean, if you say, well, we don't like this, there is fear amongst counties and cities that if they push the envelope, then the state will do something to them. We've seen the state try to take monies from Memphis, try to take monies from Nashville. They really don't like the big cities for whatever reason.
I mean, there's a very simple, clear reason.
Yes, there is. They're run by Democrats. but it's like, people are afraid of retaliation the same way a lot of folks in the medical business, haven't vocally stood up for Medicaid expansions, which quite frankly, hospitals need to survive. But they're afraid of being retaliated against this from this administration and previous.
Right.
I mean, the reality is there is a whole lot of bullying going on in the state, and it gets in the way of good governance. And politics, as you talked about earlier, politics should not get in the way of good governance and making sure that everybody can go to the doctor. Every child can go to the doctor when they're sick. That every child, no matter their zip code, gets a good quality education. That everybody can have a job where they can earn a wage to support their family so they don't have to have 2 or 3. We can do that. It's not a pipe dream. And we can do it with support and not owning it all, but we're too busy focusing on things that aren't real, like as if transgender people are trying to go into sports all over the
Right.
state. It's not a problem we have. Critical race theory is not being taught. Why can't we talk about how to help hardworking Tennessee families? Why is that not the conversation?
Exactly. That is the premise of my show in general, is that I don't understand what's going on. And I get it. Like, I joke all the time. It's like, I think I'm an average level of dumb in what's going on right now. And that me...
You got to stop saying that.
Okay.
You are so smart in that you're trying to talk to people and find out.
And that's kind of it's self-deprecating, but it's also I think it's also true, and I think there's a lot of people out there, parents that I've met through school and different activities that the kids are into and stuff like that. That when we get to chatting about stuff, it's those same little soundbitey things, and it's like, well, I've learned this because of doing the show or whatever, and they're like, I didn't know all that stuff, and it's like, I get the strong feeling from most people that it's like, I don't want to go out there and look stupid to go try to find out these answers. I don't want to they it's not that they don't want the answer, they just don't want the effort and the possible shame or whatever it is of, because a lot of, I think, because
families are busy,
right, and I think
busy.
But I think a lot of people just don't they're self-conscious about it. They don't want to look stupid because they don't know something. It's like, well, I'm comfortable in the fact that I don't know this thing, and hopefully me trying to understand it on tape gives people an avenue to learn about the thing in a way that doesn't make them uncomfortable.
Right. I get frustrated because a lot of times people will say that, oh, it's the voters' fault because they're not educated and all of that. And it's like, try to think about how busy they are, trying to pay the bills, trying to keep food on the table, trying to keep the lights on. They don't have a lot of time to spend delving into all of these things. And maybe they only listen to the politics on the radio in their car, which probably is not the best place to get your politics or to get your information. Or maybe they catch 30 minutes at night. And if they catch 30 minutes at night, I bet it's national news, not their local news.
Well, even if it's local news, it's 3 minutes of local, 10 minutes of weather, 7 minutes of sports, and then I don't know, commercial break, and then that's the nightly news. Because again, that's what frustrates me about it. Like I try to watch the news on stuff, and it's like, shoo, and whatever that story is okay. That's past.
But when I sit down with people and really get in conversations, you can have the conversation with folks about, okay, how much is this critical race theory or whatever really affecting your life? Are you able to pay your bills and put food? Do you feel like, what's going to benefit you? And what I'm hearing more than anything right now is childcare. Childcare is a massive struggle for more than 50% of Tennessee is a childcare desert. We probably lost 1 out of 5 daycares or childcare facilities after the pandemic.
Right.
And so the reality is a lot of parents are not going back to work because they're not able to get good quality childcare. And so you think about, what the state government should be doing? We should be at the table talking about how do we build the infrastructure of childcare, quality childcare throughout the state. Think about the economic and community development. Commissioner Rolfe was here the other day at Pellissippi. We all talked about what Pellissippi was doing, and he mentioned multiple times childcare and how that's a problem when it comes to getting people back in the workforce. And so we have grants in economic development, the fast track grants that bring businesses. Why don't we have grants in ECD that for businesses who might want to open up their own in-house daycare, childcare facilities, or nonprofits to open up these childcare? We can create the infrastructure. We have so much, $4 billion from the Recovery Act, and we could use some of those dollars to start building that childcare infrastructure with good quality daycares and help get people back to work.
Right.
These are the things we should be talking about, not critical race theory,
Yeah, for sure.
And not transgender bathrooms. It's not a problem.
I agree. And that's what's super frustrating about it, is because that's what takes the air out of the room, and then we don't have time or bandwidth to talk about any stuff. All right, we went long. I apologize.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay, well, we can go
It's
forever.
Terrible. I'll talk all day.
I will too. Let's we'll cut it off there. Is there any contact, any plugs, any stuff you want to put out real quick as far as
no, if you
website?
want to contact me, I'll give my cell phone to everybody, 865.
Oh, I thought it was special. Psh.
Oh, sorry. 865-660-9800. I've really had to, because during unemployment, it's so frustrating to reach somebody, and because they haven't given me an assistant yet. My assistant died at the beginning of April, and they have yet to hire an assistant for me. So I spoke with them today. The assistant I was going to get, who wanted to come and work for me, she works for another assistant. When she saw the closet they created, she said, there's no way I can do the work that I need to do in that space. And so she's not going to work. So I'm going to have to, keep working on getting an assistant. But
is there a lot? Okay? So we are going to talk about the desk thing. So is there?
Well, that's why I give people my cell phone number, because it's easier to catch me there.
What's the how are we going to fix this? How are you going to get an actual
office?
Well,
I mean, there are a lot of folks within the district. I think this time they've crossed a legal line.
Right.
Because when it's me, I'll deal with it. and I will deal with this situation. But the problem is when you've got a state employee where every single legislative assistant has a true space and all the tools they need to do their job.
Right.
None of those tools will fit in this office. They couldn't even put they put half of a credenza as a desk, because a regular legislative assistant desk if you put it in there, well, it won't fit. You could put half of it in there, but you wouldn't be able to open the door into the office. That's how small it is.
So just put a bathroom in and the assistant lives in there. I get it. That's fine. All right, it works.
So, here's the situation. And also, we're estimating they spent about $10,000 to build this little closet. And there's an empty office across the hall.
Just to be jackasses.
Yeah.
So $10,000. That's your money, everybody. All right. Outro. Oh, that was awesome. Thanks, Gloria. That was a really good time. Anyway, the AC failed. He promised me Gloria months ago, and I had to go out and do it myself, so I did. So we're almost in agreement at gmail.com, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. You can go to our website, almostinagreement.com, and get all the episodes there, or on your favorite podcast provider. While you're at any of those podcast providers, Facebook, YouTube, any of those, give us a like, a share, a thumbs up, whatever the thing is that makes us look better on those platforms. This episode is brought to you by the Fourth Creek Beer Festival. It is July 10th, 2 p.m. at 126 South North Shore Drive. That's E-Vape West and Union Jacks. Are putting this event on together. It's Union Jacks We Survived the Pandemic and E-Vape West's kind of grand opening event. So go there, check that out, get local beers and that kind of thing. Go to evapeloungeknox.com/beerfest and get some more information there as well. That's it for now. We'll come back and do some more stuff later this week, and we appreciate everybody for listening.
You talk really fast. I couldn't do
That's
that.
my Midwestness.